Hello and welcome to IGCSE English Week 4EB0. This is the second video in a series of videos on how to write essays. You have already seen that there are three types of essays which you will be tested on. It can either be a narrative essay, a descriptive essay, or an argumentative essay. In the previous video, you learned how to write an essay. There are 6 steps that have to be followed when you are writing an essay. It can be a narrative, it can be a descriptive, or an argumentative. You have to follow these 6 steps. Remember that the required word count for the examination is 400 words and the time allotted to you is only 1 hour. So, first thing today is for you to identify what a narrative essay is. What's a narrative essay? Sounds like a story to me. Definitely it is. A narrative is a well-told story. A narrative essay is a little bit different from a narrative because in a narrative essay, the author is expected to drive in a purpose for the narrative. It is not a diary entry. So basically, it's not a novel that you're writing when you're writing a narrative essay. You're writing a story, but you will have a point or you will have an idea that you want to get across to your reader or to the audience. How do you prepare for a narrative essay? Most students find it easy to write narrative essays because it's basically writing a story. And I do agree with this point because narrative essays can allow you to bring out your creativity and also allow you to imagine and write a flow of ideas that come into your mind. But to be able to write a good narrative essay, there is a lot of preparation involved. The key is to start reading. Train yourself to read. There's a wide range of books for you to select from. Novels, short stories, which are very interesting. And if you cultivate in yourself the urge to read, you will really enjoy it. And this is something that's very important when it comes to your English course. You have to learn to read. Teach yourself to read. Train yourself to read. In the next videos, where you will be learning about the other aspects, I will also teach you on how to read. Reading enables you to develop your vocabulary. It helps you learn how to use adverbs and adjectives. When you read, make short notes of the plots that you find interesting, because certain plots may be twisted and exciting so that you may be able to reproduce these plots. Identify the genre that interests you. Okay, now here's a new word, genre. Obviously, when you watch a movie, you always go by a genre. Many of you may have a favorite genre that you may like. Same goes for reading a book. Books are also based on genres, and so can your narrative essays. When you write your narrative essay, you can base your narrative essay on any one of these genres. It can be a horror, basically a ghost story, something from the supernatural, romance. It can be a love story. A tragedy is a sad story which often has a very sad ending. It can be a romance with a sad ending. It can be a horror with a sad ending. It doesn't really matter. As long as the ending in it leaves the main character in a bad situation. A science fiction can also be a very interesting way of presenting your ideas in the form of the supernatural and aliens. A comedy is a lovely way to write a short, funny story where you may have a happy ending to the end of the story. Mysteries are generally very interesting genres. So if you like Agatha Christie and Nancy Drews, you would find a mystery a very exciting type of genre that you can write. Mythical and magic. Yes, mythical and magic based stories. A similar genre that you can think of in this line is something that you get in the Harry Potter books. So if you are interested in Harry Potter books, you'd definitely be interested in mythical and magical characters. So you can reproduce something like this in your essay writing. But remember that you are allowed to reproduce, but you are not allowed to copy other people's ideas beyond a certain point. You can use fragmentations of other people's imagination, but you can't recreate another person's imagination. Always depend on your own imagination to write your own stories. So before you go for the examination, you can always think of the various genres that you can select from and reproduce a story that you may like. Before you start writing, read the topic very carefully. Select the genre that would suit the topic. Then, prepare the plan for the story as discussed earlier. So basically, as discussed earlier in the previous video, I spoke about the 6 steps which are involved in writing an essay. So don't miss out any of these 6 steps. Follow these 6 steps despite the fact that it is a narrative essay. Remember that it's very important when it comes to a narrative essay to develop your ideas in a chronological order. A chronological order means that an order of what happens. The first action first, second action later, third action later, maybe in a timely order, one after the other. This is very important when you present your ideas in a narrative. The essay should definitely have an introduction. This is the opening to your essay. It would attract the attention of the reader. Basically, you should have a hook in this, where when the reader reads the introduction paragraph, he should be able to imagine himself to be one of the characters in the book or want to identify exactly where he fits in the story. It should be very creative. It should enhance a moment to create the scene and define the purpose of your essay. So there should be a thesis statement, which I will mention earlier, which is basically a statement in your essay which would be what your essay is built on. This should be the statement which basically defines the key ideas that you will be mentioning in this essay, in your narrative essay. So for example, if you are writing a narrative essay, for example, entitled The Lost, your introductory statement should have something to do with something that's lost so that the reader will understand where you're headed with your essay. The body should be where the action takes place. It can extend from 4 to 5 paragraphs, nothing more than that. Use dialogue, literary techniques such as similes, metaphors, and figurative language in this because it's very important that you are able to imagine out what you want to say to your reader. So the only way you can convey this idea is by dialogue, by the use of figurative techniques that you have learned. Add vivid details as much as possible. Make it easy for the reader to imagine the scene, the characters, and the context of your story. The conclusion. It is the end of the essay. It can be 2 paragraphs. Most of the time it should only be 1. It can be a happy or a sad ending depending on the genre of the story. And it's very important. The point you intend to drive throughout the writing has to be made clear in the conclusion. Don't leave an unended story or a story hanging on line. Please remember that it's very important that your point that you start in the beginning should be cleared out in the end in your conclusion. Sample questions that have been discussed previously in the form of narrative essays. Over the years, there have been several narrative essays that have been used in your examinations. So I'm listing out here the type of narrative essays that you would have had. So normally the narrative essay question begins like, write a story, true or imaginary, entitled. You have 12 here, which is a very good idea if you would practice all these for yourself so that you would be able to write a good narrative. So it could be ambition. Ambition could be a narrative essay where you can write in the genre of comedy. What a Strange Day can be in the genre of horror. The Lost Key can be mythical and magic. Lost can be a tragedy. The Reunion can be in the genre of anything, comedy, romance. A Great Adventure can be again science fiction. An Interesting Offer can be a comedy. The Power Cut can definitely be anything ranging from a comedy to a tragedy. It can even be mythical and magic. A Brilliant Idea can be a comedy. A New Beginning can be mythical and magic. The Message can be horror, can be science fiction. The Visit can definitely be horror or science fiction. So these are some of the titles that have been used in examinations. So at the end of this video, I would advise you to write your essay on any one of these topics and practice, because practice makes perfect. The common mistakes most students make when they write narrative essays is that they don't have enough description. They take too long to get into the action. And sometimes most students get lost in the story. You write the story and you get lost in your own story, which is something very scary and which happens to many students. And sometimes you want to write a story with many characters because you want to allow your imagination to flow. When you have too many characters in a story, the story becomes a mess. And then you try to write a novel and not an essay. The time limit is not enough for your ideas that have been built. This often happens because you don't do proper planning when you start your essay. So these are some of the common mistakes that most students make when they write narrative essays. So try to avoid these mistakes when you write your own narrative essay. The key points that should be included in your narrative essay. There should be a plot. There should be a few characters, but don't exceed more than 5 characters. There should be a proper storyline in a chronological order. Remember, this chronological order is something that's very important. If you do not have an order of events, it would be a mess for you to write a story. Then there should be enough dialogue. There are types of essays that can be written either in the first person or in the third person, definitely not in the second person. The first person in terms of I and me, third person in terms of he and she, they. Reread the essay carefully to identify any spelling and grammatical errors. Be very, very careful. You're supposed to reread the essay. Just because you write the essay does not mean that it would be error-free. If you reread it twice, you would definitely be able to find twice as many mistakes as you would have made. In the next lesson, you will be learning about descriptive essays. If you have any questions in this regard, you can always find me at mytuition.lk. Thank you.